Hello there. I wasn't going to be talking about this book. You may or may not have come across it before, but it's always been in the background as far as literature is concerned in the English language from a British perspective. Because this book, it's on its 14th edition, it's quite old, written by the Reverend, and there's a name, E. Cobham Brewer. And supposedly, he wrote it because he sensed or knew that people at the time had become increasingly interested as to where certain phrases that were quite common came from. And it turns out, if you read through it, a lot of it is from the Bible or the Navy, as far as Britain was concerned. And it's just an amazing book. One that I think should be cherished. I first came across this in the 1980s when my father-in-law had a copy. This, probably similar to this. When was the 14th edition done? Hold on. 1989. We're actually at the 20th edition now, which came out in 2018. And I don't know if they came on the screen. Where are they coming from? What? I think the universe agrees with me. I spent some time looking at this. I remember reading it in the lounge of my father-in-law's and mother-in-law's house. It was my girlfriend then, now my wife. And so I've just opened it up randomly. Look at the words here. And these just tell you the phrases that were then common. Between the devil and the deep blue sea. Well, I think most people have probably heard of that. But what is it? It's between Scylla and Charybdis. And the reason that is of interest is that I served in the Royal Navy. And one of my ships was HMS Charybdis. There was also an HMS Scylla. Both Leander class frigates. Between Scylla and Charybdis, between two evils or alternatives, to be in a hazardous or precarious position. And then it gives you like a link. See devil to pay and no pitch hot, so on. Devil dodger, a shy hypocrite, a ranting preacher, a parson. Devil may care. I think that's quite common. So a lot of the phrases, if you're my age, would probably ring a bell. But I am aware, and it may be because I'm here in New Zealand, a lot of the phrases that I use and we're used to hearing, they've fallen out of fashion. Let's have a look at something else. Old bullion. Thomas Hart Benton, who lived 1782 to 1858. Jacksonian Democrat, so obviously American, and statesman. He opposed the establishment of a national bank and was nicknamed Old Bullion for his championship of the virtues of, quote, hard money. So it's not just British, it's American. And why do I think this is important? If we have a level of language that was well used to having a lot of these phrases, if they fall out of fashion and are no longer used, do we lessen the language? Well, you could argue no if they're replaced. And a lot of the phrases, if they're to do with technology or whatever, and that technology is no longer being used, well, yeah, it's going to fall out of fashion. Is that a problem? No. So, for instance, grommet. There it is. Grommet. Grommet. Once a common word for a young serving man or a ship's boy. It actually comes from the old French, grommet. It is also the name of a ring formed from a single strand of rope by crossing the two ends to make a loop of the requisite size and passing the ends round and round in their original lay. It's also still used in the West Country. I think it means a bustling tourist, something like Emmet or whatever, grommet. Because we predominantly don't have sailing ships of old now, which in the 19th century was falling out of fashion, should we lose that word? So the 14th edition even though it came out in 1989, a lot of common phrases would not be in here. You're not going to get... Actually, I wonder if it got nerd. Was that then a thing? Let's have a look. I don't expect it to be here in any way. No, there's no nerd. And so on. Geek. No geek either. And I think the reason I really got into this is because at this time I was very much into Patrick O'Brian, Master and Commander. In the early days of computers and the internet, I joined up what was called the Patrick O'Brian Mornington Crescent group. And someone would write a paragraph or a couple of paragraphs in an ongoing story, and then it would be passed over to somebody else to continue the story and so on. And it would go round and round. And I introduced a character called Futtock Shroud. A woman. But I wanted to make sure I got the idioms of the era correct. And this is one book that enabled me to do that. So it's useful from an historical or historian's perspective. Also, just if... Look, most people listening to this are going to be interested in language and books. This is something that will only add to the richness, especially if you can get the editions, the early editions, because I'm sure there's, from the first edition to this one, is going to be completely different. In fact, the great thing about the internet is I can probably search that up on Google Scholar and books. Hold on. Well, I've just been on about a minute, and I've got the Dictionary and Phrase and Fable, and it's the first edition, is it? It doesn't actually say that, because how would they have known? No, it's 1894. So I'm going to scroll down and have a look at what's in first and how it compares to this. Bear with me. So I'm going to show you what is here on my book. A1, AB... and then ABC book, which is not here. So let's have a look at the first edition. On the first page of proper words rather than letters and numbers, it's got a back, abacus, abadon. No, it's got a back, abacus, abadon, abandon, abaris, abatement. Yeah, it's almost the same. In fact, the version I have seems to have more letters, more phrases. Well, make of that what you will. It's a precious book as far as I'm concerned. And I just love these old cyclopedias and encyclopedias. In fact, the history of making such things really fascinates me. I talked about that when I did Samuel Johnson's plan of a dictionary. Because it's more about what gets included or what's not included. And that would have been the case here. But it's also the fact that, although it's been revised by Ivor, the original Brewer would have spent ages putting this stuff together. And thank the Lord that that happened, because it meant that somebody kept a record of the language which ordinarily would have been lost, potentially. And also, it's not just phrases, it's places. So I'm just looking here. Evans's Supper Room. Never heard of it. In the 19th century, one of the best-known resorts of London nightlife, Covent Garden. Again, that would have been forgotten, possibly, unless it was written somewhere. So these are great, wonderful historical accounts. And it just adds to the whoop and weft of the verbiage that we can so eloquently expound upon others. Could it not? I'm just looking at the notes I've made over the years. Memories are just jumping back. Wow. So it's a fantastic, well-thumbed book now. And dog-eared and stained. So there you go. Brewer's Dictionary of Phrase and Fable. More love needs to be given that way. And others. Would I recommend you get a copy? Absolutely. If you are a guardian of words and books, this is something I think you should have on your shelf. Although it could be ipse dixit, which according to the book here says a mere assertion wholly unsupported. But it could be also ipso facto. Great. Ta-ta for now.